Hey friends, welcome back to the No Wrong Turns podcast with Audrey Hickman Hunter. I'm Audrey and I'm your host, and I'm so happy that you're joining us back here on the No Wrong Turns pod. If you like what you're listening to today, make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Every other Tuesday, we have an awesome guest come on and chat about their story and their passions and how their passions have evolved and grown throughout their story. Subscribe today to the No Wrong Turns pod with Audrey Hickman Hunter on your podcast player app so you will never miss an episode. Hey friends, happy Tuesday. How are you all doing? This has been a bit of a crazy time since the last episode was released. I wanted to give a belated happy birthday shout out to my dad because it was a milestone birthday for him. And I knew that my mom was throwing him a little surprise party, so I flew home and surprised them both with the help of my little brother and sister-in-law. Happy birthday, Dad! Listeners, welcome to our 49th episode with Dr. Robyn Graham. Robyn grew up in a small town in Illinois. She knew from a young age that she wanted to have a high-powered career that focused on serving others. Throughout this conversation, we will hear all of the turns that Robyn's career pivots have taken her. You are for sure going to want to lean in and not miss hearing Robyn's story as she highlights her passions of business coaching, podcasting, and now being an author. No matter if this is your story and you can relate to her or not, I believe that there's something in this episode for you. All right, here's my conversation with Dr. Robyn Graham. Welcome back to the No Wrong Turns podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Robyn Graham. Hi, Robyn.
Hi, thanks for having me, Audrey.
No problem. Or I'm sorry, I should have said Dr. Robyn Graham.
Oh, it's fine. That's fine.
Can you give the listeners a little quick summary of who you are and just and maybe any fun facts that you want to share with us?
Sure. So I am Robyn Graham, and I am a personal branding strategist, business coach, and host of The Robyn Graham Show, and an author. I am publishing my first book, You, Me, and Anxiety, on March 15th. And that's me in a nutshell. I am mom to 3 incredible kids. I have a great husband named John, and I live in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia.
Awesome. So did you grow up in Pennsylvania?
I did not. I grew up in Southern Illinois in a little teeny tiny town of about 3,000 people that was a farming community.
Wow. What was life like for you growing up there?
It was good. It was simple. We were outside all the time. We walked everywhere, rode our bikes everywhere. We were members of the Spit Swim Club. My dad coached our sports. My mom was an artist. So she was a stay-at-home mom, and she painted. She later went on to become a librarian and went to work. But that was when I was in college. So I have 3 sisters, and we ran around the neighborhood constantly. We put on shows for our parents with the neighbor kids. And it was the simple days, the good old days before social media and all of this technology kind of took over.
Wow, that sounds very idyllic, kind of a classic childhood. So you grew up in a farming town, but not on a farm.
Right. My great grandparents had a farm, so I spent quite a bit of time on the farm, but we did not. We lived in town. My parents were not farmers.
Okay, awesome. So when you were maybe in middle school, high school age, what were some of the things that you were interested in doing, or did you have any hobbies that you were pursuing?
I was an athlete and an avid reader. So that's really what I did. I was studious. I was also in choir, but I was very athletic. Like, that was my thing. There were probably next to 0 days that I didn't have a basketball or a softball in my hand.
Wow. So were those your 2 main sports, basketball and softball?
And then I ran as well. My sisters and we would run 5Ks with my dad on the weekends, and I ran track as well. But and I was involved in clubs and different things like Girl Scouts, 4-H, all of that stuff. Played the piano. It was pretty simple, really.
Awesome. So when you were getting towards the end of your time of high school, what were some of the things that you were interested in?
Well, I loved science, and I knew that I wanted to have a high-powered career. One of my mother's friends who I babysat for and often traveled with and went to work with, she was a professor at the University of Southern Illinois, Carbondale. And I had to think about the name of the university. It's been a while since I said that. And she was a nutritionist, and she did a lot of research and studies, and she really influenced me. And I wanted to be kind of like her. I wanted to wear a suit every day. I wanted to have a high-powered career where I made a lot of money, but yet I wanted to be able to serve people. And I was exposed to pharmacy through one of our neighbors, and then my guidance counselor also suggested that for me as a career opportunity. And so I went straight into pharmacy school to become a pharmacist.
So when you were in high school or growing up, did you always know that you were going to go on to pursue college, or was that something that your family had pressure on you to do, or just something that was kind of generally expected?
My parents never really put a lot of pressure on me. They would have supported us no matter what we did, but I wanted to go to college. Education was big for me. I had this thought in my mind that education was kind of the end all be all, and I wouldn't amount to anything if I wasn't highly educated. And so for me, college was just always the avenue that I knew I was going to go.
Okay, that's great. So you knew that you were interested in, or you wanted to pursue pharmaceutical studies, I guess you would say. So what kind of program did you just start kind of in undergrad, minoring in science, or how does that work?
The school that I went to was St. Louis College of Pharmacy. It's no longer called that. It's now the University of Health Sciences of St. Louis, because they changed their scope. So they're still a pharmacy school, but they also have other degrees, like liberal arts degrees. And I'm not even sure what all they're offering now. When I went to St. Louis College of Pharmacy, it was a private pharmacy school. So you went in your first year and you stayed until you graduated. So you didn't have undergraduate studies. You had some general studies and introduction to pharmacy classes when you were in your first and second year. A lot of people after the first or second year left. They, either it was too hard or they decided to do something else. We had a lot of transfer students in from other universities who did their undergrad at a community college or a major university and then transferred in for the third year, which the third, fourth, fifth years were for pharmacy, and then all of the science and all of that stuff. And then and pharmacy specific classes like kinetics and, truly learning about the drugs and therapeutics of drugs and the physiology and anatomy and all of that stuff. And then my sixth year was focused on all rotations. So an internship, basically a glorified internship, so to speak, when I worked on my doctorate. And that involved doing kind of like a thesis project. They called it our doctoral project, but that was all in the sixth year. So I went straight through first through sixth years at one school.
That's great. I like how you kind of highlighted all of that, because I know in many times when you go to college, there's a very high chance of that one would switch majors or decide this isn't for me. So when you're in such a narrow track scope of a school, seems like there would be a high kind of turnover, but it's very cool if that's what you wanted to do, to be able to have kind of an easier pathway, because you don't have to go and apply and look for other schools and you're already familiar with that same school system.
Exactly.
During that time, you clearly finished, but did you have anything else that came up in your story that kind of marked your story?
Oh gosh, the whole experience was amazing. I worked the entire time from, I guess I'm trying to remember if I started working actually in the hospital pharmacies there near our college or the school, and worked in the pharmacies in the hospitals to get experience. And that was that was incredible. Just having all of that experience and working with all the other students and the pharmacist and things like that. It really set me up for success post-graduation when I took my boards and started my career. The one big thing that I can share is that from my entire life, I had anxiety. And this is the reason I wrote my book, is to help young women overcome or navigate and overcome life with anxiety. And when I was working on my doctorate project, I basically had a nervous breakdown. I couldn't do the presentation for the project. And so I stepped away and took some time off, took almost a year off, and then went back and finished. But I had to really nurture myself and go to therapy and, navigate life with anxiety myself in order to be able to finish the program.
Wow, that definitely sounds like something. I think that's great that you were able to take some time for yourself to be able to give yourself the self-care and the break and recovery restart that you needed. That's really awesome. As you were navigating that and then coming back for your final year, I guess I think of a pharmacist as somebody who's either kind of, in the Walgreens drive-through checking your prescriptions, or I picture you, in a lab with a microscope and like testing things out. But I don't really know. Can you tell us what did you go on to do for your next steps once you maybe as you were about to graduate or after you graduated?
So I was always very interested in more of the clinical side of pharmacy, not the retail side. So the only retail work I did was when I had to do a rotation. I had to have the experience. I did fill in at a couple of small independent retail stores, just, to help out and to learn as well. But I always chose the more clinical route. So working in a hospital, and a lot of now actually everyone who goes to pharmacy school gets a doctorate degree. So it's not like a commodity like it was whenever I went. Very few people actually did this, followed that path when I was in school. But I worked in the hospital setting. Clinical pharmacists will do rounds with doctors. They actually see patients. They help treat the patients, decide what therapeutic agents are going to be most effective. They monitor for drug interactions. They do, make sure that the liver and the kidney and the organs that help metabolize the drugs are safe and healthy. And if not, adjust the dose and all those kind of things. So I loved all of that. Teaching environments, that's what I worked in all through college and for a little bit after college. And then I went into the corporate world where I worked for managed care organizations, and I actually worked with physicians, and we created treatment algorithms and educated the patients. I worked with the marketing departments to help go out in the field and educate people on their pharmacy benefits and answer questions about the medications they were on and things like that. I designed like patient protocols and patient education and things like that, hosted health fairs and, different things like that in our employers' facilities. So like the people that we insured, I would go out to their facilities with the marketing people, and we would host a health fair, and I would have pharmaceutical companies come in and educate on, say, diabetes monitors, and we would give diabetes monitors away. And we did all kinds of different things like that. So I was never in traditional pharmacy. And once we moved to Pennsylvania, my husband and I and our baby, my company didn't have a job for me here. So I ended up consulting and doing medical writing. And so that was really how I spent the rest of my career when I was in pharmacy, was behind the scenes. I was, attending symposium, doing peer-reviewed journals and all that kind of stuff, and continuing education for physicians, pharmacists, and nurses.
Wow, it sounds like all that you've described, it was a very well-rounded part of your career. Just being able to kind of have your hand in almost at least testing out all the parts.
Yeah, I have to say, there's not much of pharmacy I didn't do, except sales. I didn't do sales.
But yeah, that's a pretty vast scope that you were able to do during that time. So you mentioned that you moved and you kind of had to pivot a little bit, and then you were going to, you're not a pharmacist now. So can you walk us through what happened for you to kind of come out of your pharmacy time?
So once a pharmacist, always a pharmacist.
Okay,
but
sorry.
I still have that background, still have that degree and the certifications, but it was 11 years ago and our children were getting older. I was having to travel for my consulting business. My husband was traveling globally about 50% of the time, and we didn't have family here. And life was just very crazy. Getting harder and harder to manage. And our children were in 6th grade, 4th grade, and 3 years old. And the older two were doing travel sports, and life was just really, really crazy. And my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, this just isn't worth it. Like, this isn't healthy. The anxiety level in our home was just increasing rapidly. We were starting to see the effects on our kids. And we just said, you know what, this isn't worth it. Our nanny at the time got very sick and we lost her. And so it just repositioned everything. And I had done photography my whole life. It'd always been a hobby, a passion. I had taken courses, and my husband just looked at me and he said, why don't you do something with your photography? You can set your own hours. You can, just be with the kids when need be, or else I'm around to cover. And so that's what I decided to do. I followed my passion and I became a professional photographer. And very quickly, I started focusing solely on headshots and branding photography, working with corporate executives and then entrepreneurs. And through that experience, about 5 years ago, I discovered that the entrepreneurs I was working with did not know how to build a personal brand. They didn't know how to create a strategy, a brand marketing strategy to build a solid foundation for long-term success. And so I saw opportunity to start consulting, and the consulting started with like image use and how to use images for search engine optimization on your website, how to use images for social media and all of those things, but really creating a personal brand so that you could build the know, love, and trust factor. And then that transitioned into, the coaching, and the more coaching I started doing, the more I fell in love with it, because it enabled me to continue to think very strategically and create, but build something at the same time. And so that is where I'm at today. Is I am a business coach, and we focus a lot on mindset and navigating all of those things that so many people struggle with, just simply because of the online world, but in general as well. Comparison, imposter syndrome, all those things that can really weigh a person down and hold them back because of fear and procrastination if they don't address those factors. So I now today coach people around my success equation, which is mindset plus strategy plus action is what equals results.
Wow, that's a lot happening there in the last decade or so for you. That's pretty crazy with all of those turns. Thinking, starting out in photography and building that, and then making the pivot after seeing your clients' needs, and being able to kind of pivot to where you are today with the coaching. I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
So you no longer do photography, correct?
No, as of January 1st, 2022, I do not do photography. Last year, I decided that was going to be my last year. As much as I still love it, I will tap into that as my creative outlet still. May even publish some coffee table books with my images or things like that. But I'm stepping away from portrait and headshot photography and just focusing on the coaching business. I came to realize that I could have a much deeper impact with the coaching. Being in photography was great because I was, making people feel beautiful and confident, but I wanted to have a deeper impact. I wanted to help create that ripple effect of good in the world. And in order to do that, I felt like I needed to work with people one-on-one and really teach them the ins and outs of starting a business, building a business, rebranding a business, to make sure that they were able to serve people to the best of their ability. And then from there, we'll create that ripple effect.
I like the way the way that you just kind of framed that. Even though photography is something that you still have a passion for, you were able to take a step back and say, hey, I need to kind of put this on the back burner and kind of just keep this as my for fun hobby on the side, and really just focus on my coaching, because that is being able to spend that focused time is going to produce more quality results.
Yes, yes.
This week in our sponsor spot is our guest, Dr. Robyn Graham. It's her new book, You, Me, and Anxiety. Do you ever wonder what it might be like not to feel anxious all the time? The good news is you no longer have to feel alone and isolated. You, Me, and Anxiety helps you to identify anxiety, recognize its symptoms, and take intentional action to manage and overcome it so that it no longer has a negative grip on your life. This book is perfect for anyone who ever struggles to get out of bed in the morning, dreams of getting a good night's sleep, has stomach flips at the thought of going to school, often feels alone and afraid to try new things or do familiar activities, finds it challenging to hang out with their friends or go to parties, often feels irritable or angry, or experiences frequent stomach pains or headaches, or both. More good news, you are not doomed. In fact, even with anxiety, you can live a happy, joyful life and experience the fabulous things that your peers are experiencing. This book does not promise that overcoming and managing anxiety will be easy, but it will show you that you have the ability and tools to navigate through it. Are you ready and willing to take intentional action to embrace the recommendations included in You, Me, and Anxiety so you can go from feeling stuck in a negative cycle to unstuck and proactively changing how you feel every day? Let's do this. See the show notes for the book links.
All right, so I have a few more questions for you, and one of them is about myths. What are some common myths that surround your passions? I guess you have kind of, a few different passions, I would say. I've heard you talk about, pharmacy, photography, and then coaching. Would you say that's correct, or am I missing some, or what would you say?
No, I think, when you look at all three, my passion is ultimately serving other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say a myth around serving other people would be that you have to have a lot in order to serve. And that is a myth. You can serve in the simplest of ways and really have an impact on other people. To me, serving includes something as simple as smiling at someone so that they can have a better day. But I think there's a lot of myths around, serving, around coaching, that, you have to have certifications. You do not. Our entire life's journeys have given us experiences that then enable us to take those experiences and use them for the good of other people, to serve other people through those experiences. So I would say a myth is that in order to be successful as a business coach or a person of service in a service-based business, you have to have certifications in order to prove your worth. And that's not true. Your life experiences give you all of the value, the wisdom, the credentials you need in order to serve other people.
I really like how you just highlighted that, especially when you were talking about things that you have learned and things that you have grown through and experienced, and being able to serve others by sharing your experience and how that experience affected you. And I really like how you said that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
So our next question is, if somebody is listening to you today and they are just kind of curious to learn more about your passions, what would be some resources or some guidance that you could point them to? So this could be a podcast, a mentor, books. What would you wish you had known as you were starting out on your journey, I guess, if there's any resource that comes to mind?
So what I'm going to say is that your thoughts create your results. So if you are a person who struggles with anxiety or fear or doubt or a lack of confidence, and those negative thoughts are weighing you down, it's going to be much harder to take action and to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish. So one of the books that inspired me was The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, because he really dives into how our thoughts affect everything else, every other aspect in our lives. Another really good book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And that book is just really good if you're struggling with time management or focus and aligning your values. The War of Art was another one that was really, really good. And then there's another one called Impressions, I believe is what it is. Okay. And when I talk a lot about discovering what your purpose is, it's you really take a deep look at your values, your visions, and your passions, and where they align is where your purpose lies, or, where you can really find a purpose that's going to be fulfilling and that you're going to then be able to serve others through as well. And all of these books combined kind of led me to how I created that equation or that philosophy and how I work with my clients.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for those resources and kind of just an overall nutshell on the why or the purpose behind that. And as we're talking about books, I just wanted to ask you, because you have a book coming out, and I was wondering if you could just tell the listeners a little bit more about it.
Yes. So as I mentioned previously, I struggled with anxiety my entire life, from little girl all the way through adulthood. And so my book is called You, Me, and Anxiety. It's part memoir, part self-help. I dive deep into the strategies and tools that I have used over the years to navigate my anxiety in hopes to help teen girls, young women navigate life with anxiety for themselves. And then the second book that will accompany the first book is a book for parents. So each chapter of the book for young women and teen girls will have a parent chapter so that parents can understand what is happening with their child. And then collectively together, they can navigate this world of anxiety and all the pressures that go along with that. And then there will be a workbook and a journal to accompany both of those.
Well, I really love how integrated that is with the partnered resources. I think that's a really cool tool.
Yeah, thank you. I'm hoping it helps many.
Yeah, that's awesome. And your book is coming out March 15th, you said, so that it will be around this time of the podcast. So you can we'll definitely be linking all that information in the show notes.
Awesome. Yes, it will be available on Amazon. And then we also have merchandise on the website and it's the I guess movement I'd like to create around the book is action over anxiety. And so we have merchandise in the shop on the website for action over anxiety.
Awesome. We'll definitely be linking to that in the show notes for everybody as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us each week to listen to our awesome guests as they come on and chat about their story and their passions and how their passions have evolved and grown throughout their story. I am so humbled and honored that you would choose to download and listen to these conversations every other week through inviting me into your earbuds, your car, your Google Home, your Alexis, wherever you listen. Thank you so much. I am so grateful for you. Can you do me a favor? Have you subscribed to the podcast? If you could do that in whichever podcast player app that you're listening to us on today, that would be a great help. If you've already subscribed, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. It makes a huge difference. I would love it if you could also just share the show with a friend. I find out about so many shows and podcasts through recommendations from friends. Maybe some of you have found this show through friends sharing it with you. Lastly, would you please leave a rating or review on whichever podcast player app that you're listening to us on? Thank you. I know these things may seem super small, subscribing, sharing the show, leaving a rating or review, but they make a huge difference in new listeners finding the No Wrong Turns pod. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for cheering on the No Wrong Turns pod. Thank you for subscribing, sharing, and reviewing the show. All right, back to Robyn's story.
All right, I have one final question for you, and that is a question we ask everyone who comes on the podcast, and that is, what is fueling you today? What is fueling your passion? And this could be anything from a new coffee drink to a new TV show, a new favorite part of town. So what is fueling you today?
That is a really good question. And I think I have to say what's fueling me today is the nearness that we are to the launch of my book, because there are, just that excitement. It's a very, very vulnerable project. And so just the excitement to finally have this be presented to the world is what's fueling me. That's literally like what's getting me out of bed every morning. And then also the other thing is that, yes, I am a huge coffee drinker. So when you said favorite coffee drink, but I'm literally like coffee and steamed oat milk. I'm so easy, so plain. But the other thing is just seeing my clients, and when that light bulb goes off and they start realizing the little things, that the little shifts in mindset that can cause big shifts in the success of their business. That's another thing that fuels me.
That's awesome. I like all of those things. That's so fun. I'm also a big coffee drinker, so every morning. But instead of oat milk, I've been lately using goat milk.
Really?
Yes.
I haven't done that yet. I'll have to try it.
My mom can't have regular cow milk, so she had goat milk, and it froths up if you use a frother just the same. So it's pretty good.
Oh, that's awesome. Good to know.
Awesome. Well, as we close out here, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I wanted to ask if you could share with the listeners where they can find you or where you want to be found.
As I said in the beginning, I have a podcast, The Robyn Graham Show, and we do episodes on anything from business and personal branding strategies to life strategies. We talk about faith, we talk about mental health, and we talk about mindset and business strategies. So it's a great resource, and you can always find me there, The Robyn Graham Show. And then the other place is my website. If you go to therobyngraham.com, it's Robyn with a Y and Graham like the cracker. So the ROBYNGRAHAM.com. And you can go to my resource page. I have things that you can download for free, like how to build a successful business, a personal branding IQ quiz. And then I also have ebook on anxiety and how to create healthy habits for a healthy mind.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a lot of resources that we'd be interested in, and I will definitely be linking those all in the show notes. Thank you so much, Robyn, for coming on the No Wrong Turns podcast today and sharing your story and about your passions, and best wishes on the launch of your book.
Thank you, Audrey. It was an honor to be here. And I have to tell you that I love the title of your show, because no one can take a wrong turn, because every single turn we take is an opportunity to learn. So kudos to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Friends, this was an amazing conversation with Robyn. There were so many passion pivots in Robyn's story. It was interesting to see at the heart of all of Robyn's major passions was her passion to help and serve others. She showed up through her pharmacy, photography, business coaching, and writing career that they were all ultimately geared towards helping others. One idea that really resonated with me was that when she said she wanted to help create the ripple effect of good in the world through helping others. I love this idea of helping others is not just, a good thing to do, but ultimately it's something that keeps on paying itself forward. I hope that we are all encouraged today from Robyn's story and her passions. My prayer is that you would consider what God has for you and what He might be leading you to. See the show notes for our music credits. All right, guys, enjoy your week. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. I would be truly grateful. And I will see you back here next time with Samantha Flynn, founder and owner of Juniper Public Relations. Hey friends, you've just listened to the No Wrong Turns pod with Audrey Hunter. I'm Audrey and I'm your host. I am so happy that you're here. If you like what you're listening to today, make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are bringing new shows every other Tuesday and always have on some awesome guests to come and chat about their story and their passions and how their passions have evolved and grown throughout their story. Subscribe to the No Wrong Turns pod with Audrey Hunter on your podcast player app so you'll never miss an episode. See you next time.